This lesson is going to be all JavaScript. We're going to output the content from the spreadsheet and output that onto the page. So listing out the title, the content, and then the current vote status. So we can go either up or down on the votes. So whenever they get clicked, they're going to send a new request over to the server, and it's going to add to the up and down votes. So we're going to add in a button that's going to make that happen. So going into the editor where we made the fetch request, and as we're looping through, we've got the data that's coming in and returning it back from the data object that's contained within data. So I know it's a little bit confusing there, but now we've got data, and I'm actually going to rename this to JSON. So this is the entire JSON object. So just to avoid confusion, and we want to output the JSON data and loop through each one of those. So using the JavaScript for each method, we're going to loop through and pick up each one of the elements that are contained within the data. And that's going to return back those individual rows of information. So we've got row, title, content, and up and down. We can console log those as we're looping through just to make sure that it is coming through properly. We don't need the index values, so we can just keep it without the quotes there, the brackets. So these are the individual objects that we have, and we can use it by the object name in order to output the information. And this is actually one of the reasons why we had to restructure the data so that it makes more sense when we're reading it at the endpoint. So it's not just an array of the data. We can actually see that this is the content, this is the title, and remember this information is coming back from the top here. So if we were to update this to description and then do a refresh of the content, it's going to come now as description. So vote this up, the title, uppers, and so on. And then the values that we have for up and down, and then also the row value. So let's loop through, and we're going to construct some content and add it onto the page, selecting the page object from output using the document query selector, selecting the element with a class of output. Let me double check that just to make sure that it does have a class of output, and that's in fact the right element that we're going to be appending the data to. So as we iterate through, let's construct the content that we're going to add into the elements, and creating a brand new element using the document create elements, and the element that we want to create is a div. This is going to be the main element container, and then within here we're going to add some content. So let's within the div set up the text content, and actually I'm going to set this as inner HTML. Save a little bit of time. We can just set up the inner HTML using the template literals. So those are the backticks just to the left of the 1 key on most keyboards. And you can get the element information. So if we want it to get the element dot title, I believe we called it, and then create a new space, and then get the element description. So we'll keep it at description for now. And then as we loop through as well, we'll take output and do an append of the div, which will add the new div to the page. So let's go back out and see what we've got now. So we've got the content there. And I'll make this smaller so that we can see the content being output, and I'll shrink my editor and enlarge that. So now we can see the content as it's being output on the page. And now let's also customize this. So save and then just set up the wrap. So it's going to wrap all of the text content so that we can see the values here. So as we loop through, maybe we want to set this as H2, and then close off the H2. And then this can be a separate paragraph for the description, and then close the paragraph. So that way we're loading each one of the items onto the page. Also, we want to create separate buttons for up and down values. So let's create those as well. So this is going to be button 1, and then using the document create element, and the element that we're creating is going to be a button. And within the button 1 text content, let's add the value. I'm going to use the template literal again. So we'll add the value of element, and I believe it's element up. Let me just double check on that. So element up, and there's element down. So element up, and then take from the div and append button 1 to that element. So that's going to add the totals, and these again are coming from the spreadsheet. And let's do the second button the same way. And then in the next lesson, we'll make the buttons interactive. So rename this to button 2, and then append button 2. And actually, we can update this as well. So having it up and down. So one is up, one is down. And you can add in some colors to the buttons as needed. So button 1, style, and let's set the background color of this one to be green. And let's set the background color of the other one to be red so that we can distinguish between the two. And actually this should be button 2 and set that to be red. So save. So we've got green, we've got red for the buttons. And with HTML5, we do have the option to have the little triangles, so we can set a triangle up, a triangle down. So let's add in the little black triangle and add in the hex value where we're adding in the text content, and save that. And this actually now needs to be inner HTML because we're calling in the indicator, the up indicator, or that's actually the down indicator. So we need to also update and add in an up indicator. So let me copy and paste the down indicator to the text button and update that to be 1. So that's the down indicator. And we also need to update it and have the up indicator. So selecting the up indicator is going to be this hex value for the up indicator. So let it refresh. So we've got up, we've got down for the indicators. You can use whatever symbols you want. This was just for demonstration purposes, so we get some type of indicators there to indicate what these buttons are going to do. And coming up next, we're going to make the buttons interactive and send the information back to the spreadsheet. So go ahead and update your project from the local machine and get it to send and update the output from the spreadsheet. And this is live data, so you can even go back here and you can test, and is live. And when you go back and you refresh, it's going to be updating the content accordingly. So it's coming right from the spreadsheet. Whenever the page loads, it's making the request to the endpoint, getting the data from the endpoint, and looping through that data that once it makes the fetch request and it returns it back, and then using the JavaScript to construct the page content and output it on the page. So add that into your project, and coming up is the interaction that we're going to be creating. So that's still to come.